Welcome back to the Northland Sports Page, hour number 2 on this beautiful Saturday. Sports, for the most part, are frozen. Dave is pretending to be for my
Oh,
visual purposes. But Brian Prudhomme, Dave
no.
Cook, Topher Davis, we're all here. This is the second annual NSP Awards. Guys, this is a lot of fun to do. Maybe it takes on special meaning this year because high school seniors, high school athletes deserve a little something extra. Unfortunately, because they're being robbed of their spring season, we are able to do a little bit less with these awards, but do them early, and hopefully high school athletes can enjoy these.
Well, yeah, Brian. We talked about last year and all the fun things that happened in the spring, and you're right. The kids were robbed of it. The fans were robbed of it. We were robbed of it. But it allows us to point that out and to address it without the angst. And let's talk about some of the really great things that did happen during the high school season.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, obviously, the spring sports season never was for a lot of these teams and the senior athletes, and so that's obviously heartbreaking. But we get to kind of enjoy the seasons that were and kind of celebrate high school athletics in the Northland.
Absolutely. And in a weird way, I guess I'm hoping that even though this is the second annual, that perhaps the third time will be the charm. Because last year, we didn't do these for the first time until the middle of August, and people liked them. And the reason it came up is because it was around the time that the SBs were going. We call these the NSPs. And we got great feedback, except for a couple people told us, well, these are great, but maybe next year don't do it when the seniors you're honoring are already moved into their college dorms. Well, last year it was too late. This year it's too early. So maybe next year, the third time will be the perfect charm because obviously next year we hope there are sports at all, especially spring athletes who deserve better.
Yeah, we'll have to plan it for the weekend after the high school baseball tournament, right? Isn't that last?
Absolutely. So people can spend their grad parties watching the NSP Awards.
100% agree with that. In fact, that should be mandatory viewing at that point.
Absolutely. Radio is not a visual medium, but all of a sudden we are a visual medium. And we're kind of enjoying this new format as well because we can take some liberties with timing, take some liberties, obviously, with apparel, take a lot of liberties with preparation. It's just a different animal. These awards this year were a different animal, too, because we are so, as a trio, engrossed in the fall and winter. No disrespect to spring, because Dave already mentioned how many fabulous things happened there last year, but I feel like maybe we had a better handle of who we were nominating this year because we were part of so much of it. These aren't about us, but we just talked in hour number 1 about careers that we didn't get to see. I'd like to add all the spring athletes this year that we didn't get to see their careers end. But as far as our award nominees this year, we saw a lot of this.
We saw so many cool careers. Some come to an end, some just happening. We talked about careers that we wish we could see, in the past, right? We were talking about players that we wish we could have seen when they were in their prime. Well, kids like the McClure brothers, we're getting to see that now, right? Those sort of interesting, stories that are yet to be made.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
we're allowed or lucky to have such talented high school athletes here in the Northland and in a variety of different sports and multi sport athletes too that are able to take their talents to different avenues. And I know that's a spoiler alert that comes up a little bit later is talking about some of that as well.
Absolutely, it does. It's interesting because I almost texted you guys this morning and said, do you want to add one best game that we broadcast this year? And then I looked at our regular game of the year nominees and I went, you know what? I just fed my own point. We were at a lot of these, so there's no point in adding a topic specific to us because, again, we're very fortunate to be a part of most of this.
Yeah, you're right. One way or another, we were involved in 4 of the 5, I think.
Absolutely, and that just means that soccer isn't on the radio, and
Right.
we none of us do PA for that. So that segues nicely into the first award for this year. And what we're going to do is same thing as last year. We're going to have a first, second, and third, but we're also going to mention the honorable mentions. We're going to take the honor in doing that. And our first category, I think it's pretty appropriate, guys. It's game of the year because the one thing I think that people are missing the most right now, being able to watch games.
100%. But if you're going to be able to watch classics, these are the classics of the year that you're going to want to be able to sit back and rewatch.
And the first honorable mention, placing fifth overall for game of the year, took place in boys soccer. I just got done talking about how much we're a part of. So, of course, I kick off with the one that we weren't. But Easton Denfeld boys soccer. Dave, you talk about how much better high school sports are when the East and West are both good. This is the primary spot where that happened.
It truly is, and look at the development of soccer in our community. You know, when you have enough talent and coaching skill and passion that the both ends of the town are so good in soccer, and the expectations of those games, you know, the winner is in the air, right? There's no absolute clear-cut favorite when it comes to soccer in our area, and that game was testament to that.
Well, and it's interesting because this year they had a winner. Last year there was no winner in that game, but they were higher up in the game of the year because they played to a tie, because both teams made it to state. This year East wins, but neither make it to state. Yet some argue it was a better game.
Yeah, well, I think some of that's because you did have a winner. I mean, I think that's part of those reasons. That's part of the reason.
Right, and I think also this plays into not only the rivalry between the schools, but the rivalry between these two particular teams, because they know how big, you know, the building on the history and having the soccer grow in such talent, you know, in the area. It's exciting to see, and for both Duluth Denfeld and Duluth East to have top-notch boys soccer teams and to have them go so far, you know, have such a fantastic game. I mean, that's a game that schedule comes out and they circle it no matter what, and it's an exciting game, and it's a fun time to head out to the pitch.
Toph makes a great point on this one, Brian. This game isn't just being circled by the soccer players any longer. This game is being circled by sports fans in our town at the beginning of the season, and sports outlets. You know, it's not just we're going to cover a soccer game because, well, we have to cover a soccer game. It's circled number one that day, Denfeld and East and boys soccer. It's the first thing we cover that day.
Well, and I think some of it too is as simple as the calendar. Sometimes these aren't just soccer players. These are kids that play soccer against each other, but they might later play hockey. They might later play basketball. They might later play baseball in a normal year. So it's just the kickoff of the ageless rivalry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that there's rivalries within the rivalry. That's for sure.
All right, so spoiler alert, Easton Denfeld soccer places fifth. Easton Denfeld will come up again, but placing fourth, Dave, I'll let you have the floor because this was your baby. You wanted it higher.
I wanted this one higher. This is the Hammer game. This is Hermantown going to Proctor. I was fortunate enough to be on the radio for this one with Ted Keefit. Ted's probably yelling at the screen right now. It should have been number one, but it shouldn't have been number one. The game wasn't all, you know, it wasn't polished, right? It wasn't fantastic play after fantastic play, but it was Northeastern Minnesota grind out football. There were mistakes made by both teams. There were great plays made by both teams. And it came down to the final drive, right? And it came down to a final drive, which ended up as an interception in the end zone. Proctor wins the Hammer in Proctor. So the intensity of the game, the joy after the game, it's everything you want in a sporting event. And it's fourth in our game of the year.
Right. Dave is not happy. And Topher, I want to pitch it to you here because Dave makes some good points that it's all about what happens in the game, not just the matchup. Because if you want to talk matchups, a game that's not on here, Hermantown playing Denfeld in hockey. The matchups were hyped up to the nth degree. The games weren't that good. This was the reverse.
Right. This was a proverbial game, and obviously Dave mentioned he got to work this game with Ted on Rails TV. I was also there with the immortal Sam Fryer working this one on the radio, and it was obviously with that type of media hype, obviously with multiple coverage, it was a big game. It's a big rivalry game. It was the ultimate game where you talk about throwing the records out the window, and these two teams don't like each other, and that was exactly it. Dave talked about old school beat 'em up football. The only thing that made that more difficult was it was played on the field turf and not on a muddy field somewhere, because this was the perfect type of game that would just be a muck 'em up, muddy field type game, because it was teams making big plays and then teams making mistakes, and it came down to a final drive, and Proctor ended up coming away with the Hammer. It was an exciting game, an exciting matchup. Obviously, it was a huge win for the Proctor Rails, a team that their season wasn't going the way they had hoped it was going, and that was a redeemer, I think, for the Proctor season, was winning that game.
Yep. It's interesting that Topher mentioned the playing surface, because I think if you didn't see this game or didn't listen to it, because there were multiple ways to do that, you guys covered that. If you just saw the final score, which I want to say was 12-8. You'd think it was played in Hermantown instead on that muddy field.
Yeah, it like I said, it wasn't pretty, but the ending of it was amazing. The plays, like Toph said, plays that were made were huge. The plays weren't 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards. There were long runs, there were swing passes. It was just a fun game to be a part of, and like stakes were high and shouldn't be fourth, but so be it. It is.
All right, so Dave's baby places fourth. So far, we're hitting the good geographical rivalries, though, with Easton, Denfeld, Proctor, and Hermantown. Oh, by the way, in the 3 spot, Topher, we go right back to Easton, Denfeld, but in the sport that the Northland probably embraces the most.
Yeah, exactly. We get to number 3. We've got Duluth East and Duluth Denfeld in boys hockey, the big crosstown matchup that happened. I know I had the opportunity of catching some of the broadcasts that you two did for that particular game. I was at Hermantown Arena working a different game that evening, but I remember checking in on the scores, and that was a game that was a wild one. It was like, wow, what's going on down at Heritage?
Well, and that was the game that all you had to do was check Twitter if you wanted to know if Dave Cook was part of that game or not, because Dave Cook's trending night on Twitter was that night. I will forever be accused of having at least a little East bias. Perhaps Dave thought it was going to be an overdrive that night because people accused you, Dave, of going the other direction.
Yeah, I felt that was kind of selective hearing, but afterwards, you and I talked about it as well. I was cheering for a good game. And so, yeah, I probably needed to pump the brakes a little bit on cheering on Denfeld when they would make a play. But the game was, it was a good game. It was fun. There was a lot of potential to watch the Mulcour kids and see indeed how they would match up. So, yeah, it was a good game.
So it wasn't just Howie Hansen in the building staring at you that made you think you had to bring up Denfeld.
It was Howie Hansen standing in the middle of the coach's circle or the captain's circle before the game, though, which was enjoyable.
Well, and again, on paper, this matchup has been different over the years. Usually it's East by a landslide. On paper this year, it was probably the reverse. Denfeld, their best season in ages. East, their worst in forever. I think a lot of people thought this is the year Denfeld gets them again. They only do it every decade and a half or so. Somebody must have told East that, because even though they only played with the hair up there where for about 5 minutes, they popped 5 goals in that time.
Yeah, that Denfeld just kind of lost their stuff for, like I said, 5 minutes, and East took advantage, no doubt.
It was another one of those ultimate rivalry games where throw the records out the window. Obviously, Duluth East was able to get up for that game, a game that on paper, you mentioned it was the year Denfeld should have won that game. They had the team to essentially probably run Duluth East out the building, and it didn't turn out that way at all. And Duluth East was able to prove that there's still a lot of pride in putting on that sweater, and they weren't going to allow an easy victory for anybody, and it turned out being a fun, hard-fought game.
It absolutely did, as Dave has levitated back into his position here. He's got a poltergeist.
Come on, you didn't see that? I was quiet.
But you've got a poltergeist behind you, because I think you just went to close a door that just reopened.
So if there's a real chance that we'll have guests, he'll be a little bigger, have a big curly tail. I was trying to avoid Frankie's inaugural appearance on the NSP.
Well, that happens, but back to the East Denfeld game. I think the other interesting part, Dave, was we all know how good Sean Eastie can be. All you had to do is think about the section final this year or any game last year. Well, that night against East, Sean Eastie wasn't good. Sean Eastie got pulled. Jacob Snyder comes in completely cold off the bench. And Jacob Snyder is a tremendously talented goaltender. But you and I looked at each other and went, ice cold and East is on fire, bad mix. Jacob Snyder kept them in that hockey game.
Yeah, Jake Snyder sure did. That was when Jago called that timeout, and we were like, yeah, okay. And he did. That timeout was perfect. The goalie change at that point was perfect because it did truncate the momentum that East had going on.
Well, and Topher, we know how much Denfeld hockey was applauded with good reason during the year. But if they need another reason to be hungry next season, lost to section final, lost to Hermantown twice, lost to East, lost to Cloquet. Great team, still under the radar in their own area?
There's still plenty of motivation for Duluth Denfeld next season to continue to work hard and take that next step. You mentioned, the section final loss to Hermantown, obviously losing in the rivalry matchup against Duluth East. There's still plenty of steps to be taken. Denfeld's a very talented team. They proved it last year with the super sophomore sensations they had, but their junior class as well was phenomenal. And I think it'll be interesting to see the steps that they can take this over the summer, and it's all about putting the hard work in over the summer to take that next step. And I think Denfeld is going to be another team to watch next hockey season.
Yeah, Brian, I don't think they're going to be overlooked at all next year. I think that the expectation for Denfeld next year will be to make a serious run at Hermantown. They're not going to be that adorable team from Denfeld that, given some breaks, they could be 500 again, or they're going to be a team that if they don't make the section final, they're going to be really disappointed. And if they don't beat it, they're all looking at Hermantown saying, Beyondy's gone. They're going to make, they've lost some defensemen. This is our year to go get them.
So as you're saying, Dave, spoiler alert, perhaps Denfeld won't surprise anyone next year.
That's my point. Yep.
All right, so Easton Denfeld soccer got 5th. Easton Denfeld hockey got 3rd. Proctor Hermantown football in between and 4th. Number 2 goes from a game that Dave and I did on the radio to a game that Topher and I did on the radio. Topher, I think if the result would have been flipped, this probably gets flipped up a little bit higher as well.
I think you're absolutely right. The number 2 game is the Class A state championship game between Hermantown and Matamidi. You talked about, Jacob Schneider keeping Duluth Denfeld in that game against Duluth East for a while. I think Matamida's goalie put on a show for the entire state of what it's like to steal a game, because Hermantown was dominating that game against Matamidi, especially late into the third period. In the third period, the ice was completely flipped.
Absolutely.
And Hermantown was able to get one in with seconds remaining as Pionk tied that game up and sent it into overtime. And anytime you get overtime in a state championship game where there's, you win, you score the next goal, you're state champion.
All it takes is a bounce.
Score the next goal. Exactly. Yep. It takes one bounce, and that's exactly, unfortunately, what happened to Hermantown is that the bounce didn't go their way in the overtime period, and they come away with the runner-up finish to a fantastic season for the Hermantown Hawks. But that game is going to be one that's talked about, I think, in high school hockey realm for a while.
Absolutely. I didn't think about this until after the game. I never said it on the air, and I'm glad I didn't, but I'm going to today. I know Proctor and Hermantown are big-time rivals. Do you think anybody in Proctor giggled a little bit that Hermantown's state championship was foiled by a kid named Dardis? That goaltender was unbelievable for Matamidi.
The game from watching it on TV was so.
Wait, you didn't listen? 2 of your closest friends are covering the game, and you're watching on TV?
I was watching it on 45.
We know how we rate, Toph.
I was watching the online version. The thing about that game, which I think is so interesting, is you have to look back earlier in the season. If I remember right, Hermantown ran Matamidi out of the rink earlier in the season, and so you put that on top of the quality of the game. It made it even more interesting when it was close.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Matamidi made the trip to Hermantown earlier, just before Christmas time, and it was a weird game. Hermantown had some illness going through the locker room at that point. Matamidi was missing a couple guys, and Hermantown ended up, it started close, and Hermantown ended up piling it on, and I think scored 9 goals in that game against Matamidi, and it ended up completely flipping. Matamidi's defense figured it out. Dardis, that kid, speaking of sophomore sensations, he comes in as a sophomore goaltender in the state championship game.
I was going to say, isn't that the scary part if you're not a fan of the Zephyrs?
Puts on a show like that on the biggest stage and comes away with the state championship for Matamidi.
Of course, the other angle to that, and we all voted personally, and these results are cumulative of our personal votes, and I put this game as number 1, and then when I looked at it, I went, well, I shouldn't have, because it really wasn't a great game. It was a great goaltending performance. Hermantown did everything right except for score.
It was a great last 5 minutes. That last 5 minutes of that hockey game, the way Hermantown was playing around the net, was amazing.
You're right. It was one of those games where it's frustrating for Hermantown to look back. I know that because they did everything right. They completely, were dominating the offensive zone. They had great goaltending on their own end. making some big saves when Manamina had a couple chances to put more distance in them between there, and they just weren't able to get the bounces. It just wasn't their day. That's one of those games where that game they play each other, 10 times, they might win 9, but not that night. Manamina pulled their miracle.
No question about it. So the state final finishes at number 2, and it gets surpassed by a section final. Now, we talked recently about games we got to do on the radio. I wish we could have done this one because a couple of years ago, Topher and I were doing some Mirage games. This was not necessarily the best memory for them because they come out on the wrong end. But for girls hockey as a sport, this was a little bit of a pinnacle, guys. Dave, you got to be the PA guy that night.
Yeah, Brian, if it's not the best, it's one of the 3 or 4 best buildings I've ever been in. Proctor Rink, there's people hanging. I mean, the line to get into the parking lot was still long after the puck had dropped. The intensity in the building, every time a player on your team had the puck, it got louder on one end of the building. There was a mad scramble at the end of the game where it could have gone the other direction. We had 2 local long-term hockey stars in Emma Stauber and Courtney Essie Olin as coaches. So it was more than just the players on the ice. There was rivalry between the coaches. I mean, the game was amazing. And to be part of that building that day, I mean, you never wish anybody ill, but if Ted's got to get sick and has to find a PA guy, let that be the game, because that was amazing.
Right. That was the first virus that was good, right? Good for you anyway.
Exactly. Well, I'd been sick, 2 weeks earlier, and Ted helped out then. So all's fair in game, all fair in love and war. And when you get to announce the section championship between 2 teams that have a lot of interaction, my goodness, that was fun.
All's fair in love and war and public address announcing. Who knew? Says all 3 of us who do that job. All right, we'll keep moving. Congratulations to Proctor Hermantown and CEC girls for the game of the year. We got to get moving because we're going to have an award recipient in about 15, 20 minutes. We got a lot more to go through. So we'll pick up the pace a little bit with the surprise of the year. Dave, our first honorable mention, finishing 7th. I'm going to pitch to you because you're the guy that had him as a surprise. I wasn't surprised at all. Marshall girls basketball. They were that good. The problem with surprising is you either have to be a lot better or a lot worse than people thought. I didn't think Marshall qualified here, but you did.
I did, because I thought that in its entirety from the beginning, all the way through their run, right? So the surprise maybe didn't start when they were the number 1 seed in 7 AA, but starting with that first game in the sections where they probably should have lost to Mesabi East, going all the rest of the way up, it was, in my opinion, was surprise after surprise.
I guess I can see that. For me, it was the surprise that Proctor never stood in their way.
Ever. I mean, that's true.
But the one surprise that I did go with for Marshall girls basketball is there are basketball people and there are hockey people. And then there are Dave and I, but that's a different topic altogether. But you don't usually see basketball people wanting to help hockey people or vice versa. I wasn't surprised at any Marshall outcomes. I was surprised at Miss Friday being part of CJ's team.
Well, and not just dressing and sitting on the bench. I mean, Marin played.
Arguably being their best defender when they needed it.
Right, exactly. After playing the entire hockey season on the ice without, stepping on the hardwood at all, comes right from the ice to the hardwood and is a contributing member.
Right, and being not only that, but stepping onto a basketball team that is one of the favorites in the section at playoff time and joining a team at that point is incredible for Marin Friday and what she was able to do. And not only, we mentioned multi-sport athletes before, but she did it in the same season. It's pretty incredible.
Right. Basically a couple of weeks apart. Oh, this season is over. Find some high tops. Let's go. I'm not sure how many could do that. The next surprise, I don't know how to phrase this one because I voted for them, but I'm almost questioning why. Duluth East football. I think I was surprised at how good they were. And then when the injury bug hit them super hard, what a different team they were. It was a 9-game season for them. The first 6, fantastic. The last 3, survival mode.
I'll tell you, Brian, I was most interested in them because of how ridiculously good they were for Northeastern Minnesota football offensively. When we went and saw them a little bit, my surprise was sitting back and going, I think this team offensively can compete around the state, not just in Northeastern Minnesota. Injuries happen. You know, when you get beat up like they got beat up, there's not a whole lot you can expect. When you lose, you know, your running attack and you just, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that. But how they came from, you know, East football that inevitably disappoints to having that beginning of the season where it was just, wow, what a football team.
No, they really were. And Topher, I think the other piece of it was Northeastern Minnesota football, as Dave put it, is ground and pound. East wasn't. They had a running attack, yes, but if they needed to throw, they did. And wow, did they ever.
Well, I think that's exactly it. Duluth East football had ran a metro-style offense, and they were able to pull it off with a strong-arm quarterback in Caden Edwards. And seeing what they were able to do, and speedy wide receivers, and you know, their running attack, being able to balance it all out. When they were running full tilt, they were one of the best teams that I've ever seen in northern Minnesota high school football, for sure.
So the other football-related surprise, Topher mentioned Caden Edwards, Mr. Aerial Attack. Hermantown football certainly wasn't the same aerial attack, but they probably had the most athletic quarterback in the area, and nobody expected him to be on their roster. Hermantown's best basketball player said, I'll go under center in the fall. I was shocked when Peter Sumas was named the quarterback of Hermantown football.
I wonder what would it be fun with a truth serum in a dark room to find out what UMD's basketball coach thought as well.
And that's what I mean. It's not that he couldn't do it. He's one of the best athletes that I've ever seen. Spoiler alert, I voted for him #1 athlete of the year. He didn't win, but we'll get there. But just the willingness to do it. I remember as a public address announcer for football at East when Alex Toscano was playing quarterback at Duluth East. And Alex Toscano was a phenomenal hockey player. And Dave, you said Duluth East football kind of inevitably disappoints. And those of us at Duluth East in the past knew that too. And every time Alex Toscano would drop back to pass, we'd all hold our breath thinking about the winter. I have to think that not only UMD's basketball coach probably did that, but Andy Fensky at Hermantown probably did that. Peter Sumas just showed how good he was.
Yep, for sure he did. You know, Sumas is kind of a throwback athlete to the, you know, before I was in high school where the star would play every sport and be the star in every sport, and just be kind of the golden child, shall I say, of the community. And Sumas has got that kind of athletic talent just dripping off him, and everybody says he's a good kid. You know, it's not just the athlete, it's the young man that they're building.
Right, and to be able to step into a football team that he wasn't even really a part of, and then as a senior become a starting quarterback for your high school football team is something that just shows how incredible an athlete he really was, and what a surprise I guess it was to also, you know, Hermantown has a big question mark at quarterback. Next thing you know, they got Peter Sumas there. Isn't he the kid that's going to play basketball at UMD? And that's exactly
right.
It.
Dave, if you remember, we did a broadcast at Bobcat of Duluth to preview the football season this year, and I said to you, there's Peter Sumas over there. Why? And Mike Zagelmeyer gave us the answer, and I went, whoa.
Yeah, you're going to do what? With whom?
Right. It was, you know, a little bit like, well, is Blake Biondi going to play halfback then? What are we doing?
Exactly. Let's bring all the guys. Joey Pierce is playing middle linebacker. You know,
I might sign up to see that now that you mentioned it.
Yeah, you just don't see that. You don't see star athletes. You didn't see Ben Peterson going out for the hockey team for Marshall last year. You know, you can just go through step by step of guys who you think you could have done things with because they were athletic. But those one sport stars today, very seldom do they go play other sports. And to see Sumas go into a spot where he hadn't been before made that all the more surprising.
Right. And I think what makes me feel better about how I pushed for this is Topher Peter Sumas playing quarterback finishes 4th for us. We also opened this up to Twitter fan polling. Peter Sumas won that one.
Yeah, it just shows kind of the story of how incredible it was that to have Peter Sumas jumping in there as a starting quarterback for a team. It's incredible, and to see the fan voting on Twitter as well. It's to see the support he had there. It's kind of fun.
All right, so those are the ones that didn't place, if you will. Top three starts with third place CEC girls hockey. I don't agree with this. They weren't on my ballot. That's a really good section. They've been really good before. It didn't surprise me at all. Now, if you want to say, but Brian, they won 17 in a row at one point, and they placed second in the state. That surprised me a little, but they didn't come from the doldrums to do this. They've always been good. They were just really good.
Yeah, but you're not taking into account, as you said, with Matamida, Dardis playing the game of his life. Well, they've got what, a 12-year-old goalie? I mean, their young goalie stood on her head, taking her through some of the most difficult of difficult. I mean, senior goaltenders struggle in buildings that are packed, and she didn't. I mean, the run they made, their forwards were talented, no question. I mean, as talented as a group of forwards you're going to see as a group at the same time in a high school. But their back end was okay, and their goaltender was young and unproven. And for them to get to the second place or get to the championship game was a surprise.
I agree. Just them getting all the way that far was surprising a little bit. We knew the talent they had up front and how good they were going to be, but I think everybody also looked at how good the rest of the section was as well. And the fact that just a few weeks before that section final game, they played against Proctor Hermantown, and Proctor Hermantown took care of them pretty easily.
Right.
And so
but don't forget that Proctor Hermantown was beaten by him early in the year, and they proclaimed themselves basically section champs in November. At least they lived up to their own hype.
Right. So I think that it was a up and down season, I think, for them a little bit. They went on that huge run, and it was like, wow, is this for real, or who are they playing? And they proved it was for real. So I think that's why I had them on my ballot.
And I agree with you now that you put it out there, but actually one of the points that you made for it would be a point that I made against it, because you talked about the section being so good. That's been true of that section for years. Part of the truth behind that section for years has been CEC. So that's why it didn't shock me. It's not like North Shore won 7A in boys hockey. It's not like that.
No, I agree with that. But they overcame such key components of their team that could have failed them. Probably should have, honestly. Coming from a guy who watches a team that has been able to score for years, and to the idea that you had a freshman goaltender step up and carry you all the way to state, that's a big deal.
All right, so the number 2 surprise should probably just be called the reminder of the year, because it surprised us, and it's more of an indictment on us, because the rest of the community got behind them so hard. And we put so much focus on Northeastern Minnesota football, and I know I'm not exactly Mr. Pro Wisconsin, but I don't normally lose sight of Superior. Topher looks like he's got their colors on today. Superior football was huge. I mean, the alumni they got behind them, the community, the media. Superior football made a run that we were not familiar with.
And we weren't prepared for.
Exactly.
They did not start out well. They had their quarterback go down because they were going into a different style of offense. And then their stud, Gronsky, went from running back to quarterback, and all of a sudden everything clicked for that team. And for 4 or 5 games, they were unbeatable. They made it all the way, into the tournament, got some wins in the tournament. And at the beginning of the year, that just wasn't going to happen. And to see that team turn it on like that was as big a surprise as you're going to see.
I think so, and I think part of it as well is just because, in this media market, the Northeastern Minnesota, Northwestern Wisconsin, football teams making longer runs in the preps level isn't always something that happens too often. It's maybe they'll get to a state tournament and get blown out by 40 points when they play a team from a different section.
Hypothetically, of course, right?
Exactly, totally hypothetically speaking. But to see Superior go on their run, I think was and just the surprise of it being a little bit unexpected, a little bit to people who weren't necessarily keyed in and locked into the program from day one.
So they are number 2, the number 1 surprise of the year. And again, I think this award is not something you want to win frequently, because you want to lose the reputation of being a surprise. We just talked about this. Number 1 is Denfeld Hockey. Again, I don't necessarily agree, because last year they weren't bad. Just this year they were that much better.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Brian. I'm not sure this one fits, but Let's Play Hockey covers a covers the state pretty well, and their initial season rankings are usually, bar injury, are pretty accurate. And Denfeld crawled from number 14 preseason to number 7, which means they beat teams. And we knew that their sophomore class was supposed to be good, but we really didn't know how good. And the McClures and that group really, I mean, the jump that they took when they're seniors, Denfeld should be the favorite.
I think the other thing.
You're absolutely right.
I'm not sure if my muter was working or not. Go ahead, Topher. Yeah.
No, yeah, I just want to jump in real quick. Brian was figuring out the mute situation. But yeah, Denfeld hockey, you're right. They've lost that surprise label now because they have proven themselves to be amongst one of the best teams in Class A. They're in that top 10 conversation. It's a testament to what Coach Dale Jagos put in, and it's a testament to what we've been hearing for years is, this Pee Wee class for Denfeld is going to be good. This Denfeld class, if they can hold it together, and they all stayed strong, and they ended up going to Duluth Denfeld High School, and that's a testament to building that program together, and it's exciting to see for the area hockey as well. Yep. So they were a bit of a surprise, I think, the steps that they took, but they're losing that label very, very quickly.
It's like Brian said, this is an award you don't want to win a lot, and this will be their only year to win it because next year they ain't surprising anybody.
Exactly. It's like winning comeback player of the year. You don't want to have to come back from anything time and time again because there are things you can say about Denfeld that don't fit. All they did was go one game further than last year. They still lost to Hermantown twice. They lost to East. They lost to Cloquet. Those aren't good, but I think what we do is we look at as media members, what are we still talking about late in the postseason? Well, this isn't 1989 anymore. Yet the state tournament was quickly approaching. We were still talking about Duluth Denfeld every day. That surprised us. It won't anymore.
No, it will not. No, it will not. Guys like Lahette have laid the groundwork as a senior captain who did all the dirty work, has laid a groundwork of expectations. So now it's going to be up to that junior and sophomore class to carry on those expectations.
All right, so that is our surprise of the year category. Probably none of the folks we're about to discuss are surprises because when you're up for senior athlete of the year, you either had one heck of a season or one heck of a career or probably both. Almost everybody in this category had both.
Yeah, there's no weak. As they say, there's no weak sister in this group.
Well, and you started with Gronsky, and just the positional change in itself is headline enough, and we already talked about everything that the team did.
Yeah, that just go back and watch some of the highlights of the playoff run that Superior took, and how heads and shoulders above everybody else that he was during that time. Took on the leadership role and is heading to Bemidji State now to play football as he's classified now as an athlete because he's played all the different positions rather than just one.
Right. Yeah, Bemidji State is becoming a popular spot. We'll touch on that as this category goes. Go ahead, Toph.
Right. It shows a little bit of the depth of the senior athletes we had in the area when we're talking about Gronsky here at number 7. It's just incredible because he's a very good athlete and is going to have a good career at Bemidji State as well.
Well, and if you go to number 6, I'm going to eat my own words a little bit here because when I said CEC hockey is not a surprise, but if they don't do what they did this year, our number 6 selection, we're not as familiar with as we should be. Taylor Nelson was unbelievable.
Yeah, Taylor Nelson was that senior driving force. When they needed something, she was one of them that they went to, and another Bemidji State commit. And it's going to be really interesting because she's one that has a chance when she's in college to become much, much more.
Right, and I think about what she did at the state tournament as well. I mean, she obviously put up huge goal numbers all season long, but then at the state tournament when CEC needed a big goal in a big spot, it was Taylor Nelson that was scoring that goal, and she obviously had great chemistry with Kiana Bender, another one who probably could have been included at this list if we go down just a couple spots more.
I was just going to say, is Bender and Nelson the Jordan and Pippen of CEC girls hockey?
Right, it's incredible, but yeah, Taylor Nelson obviously very deserving to be on this list, and she's another one. It's be fun to watch the local athletes continue on to the next level.
And our next one up Dave, you and I kind of salivate over the multi-sport athlete. Sam Pogachnik, anything that she played, she dominated. Pretty simple as that.
She and an A+ kid, comes from a family with history, but she is on the volley. Do you remember the All-Star volleyball game? I mean, whenever she came onto the court flipped a little bit.
Right. The only thing we had to do was make sure that we had the name pronunciation right because we knew we were going to be saying it a lot.
Right. We just kept saying Sam. I
Right.
agree. But on the basketball court, same thing. When she played well, they were really good. And so, yeah, Sam absolutely belongs on the Senior Athlete of the Year.
And then number 4, Caden Edwards, we just kind of gave his dissertation. I got to say, if COVID-19 doesn't happen, he's probably into the top 3 because, oh, by the way, he's going Division I in baseball. East had a great team coming back. We just didn't get to see it.
Yeah, he's the one, when we were looking at all this, he's the one that you feel most badly for because last summer when we did this, it was Baseball City, and it was East that got, kind of put aside because Denfeld came out of nowhere for the first time in 9 generations.
Right.
And Marshall just did what Marshall was supposed to do for the first time. This would have been the year for East.
Absolutely. And Duluth East last year beat Duluth Denfeld, lost to Marshall by a run, lost their section final by a run. If all 3 schools in Duluth last year make that state baseball tournament, Caden Edwards is being talked about a year ago, even though it wouldn't be for senior athlete.
Yep. He's that group, that East baseball group is the one that it's really too bad for the spring sports. And you're right. Caden Edwards probably, if he'd had the season that was expected of him, would be up the list a little bit. But this top 3, Brian, that's pretty tough top 3. I'm not, he'd have had to have a great year to beat any of these guys.
Yeah, the top 3, I'm even disappointed in who's third. And our guest that'll come on later will probably scream at us for this. But Grace Kirk is number 3. And it's probably only because she's a one-sport athlete that she dominates in versus the multi-sport. But small school, a sport that isn't followed to the level it should be, and you're a McDonald's All-American, I voted her higher than this, but she settles in at number 3.
Yeah, when you've got the small school kid, the Division I commit to Brown, it shows she's more than just an athlete, right? Because Brown isn't looking for, Brown's not looking for a jock. They're looking for an athlete. There's some educational component to getting into that, shall we say? But she's been, like you said, Brian, basketball is underplayed in our area. Girls basketball specifically underplayed in our area, so she maybe didn't get the push she should have gotten.
Well, and if you think about girls basketball, and I want to ask CJ this later, this could have been a year because it was a shortened sports season where we could have done team of the year sport by sport. Girls basketball would have been the hardest one.
Yes, agreed.
I think you're absolutely right. The girls basketball had their season was in the local area was impressive to see, and Grace Kirk was obviously at the top. You mentioned McDonald's All-American. That's an incredible honor to be in that type of that rarefied air, if you will.
Yeah, that's going to be CJ's point here, isn't it? Everybody else that we're going to be talking about isn't a McDonald's All-American.
Right. CJ is going to very kindly tell us we're crazy, I'm sure. But the 2 that finish ahead of Grace, both are Hawks of Hermantown. Not a lot to say about number 2 because we just did for the last 10 minutes. Peter Sumis, you go to 2 section finals, you lose them both, but you dominate both sports. And the fall sport football, you just decided, hey, I'll pick it up this year. Hard to beat that.
Right. That's the key when we say senior athlete when it comes to Sumis is the multi-sport senior athlete.
I think that's exactly it. Sumis obviously proved his worth. I mean, everyone knew what he was going to be able to do on the hardwood, but then just picking up football and becoming a starting quarterback and taking a team all the way to a section final game like that for Hermantown is incredible to see the athlete that is Peter Sumis.
It'll be the same argument. Hopefully we get to make next year for Friday. You got
says the guy in the Topper sweatshirt. Shocking.
Yep. All-star, all-state hockey player. Oh yeah, and picked up the basketball at the last minute and was on a team that went to state tournament.
So Peter Sumis finishes at number 2. Peter Sumis is in at number 2. I'm going to wrap myself out as kind of the guy that maybe didn't vote for Derek Jeter in the Hall of Fame because I didn't vote for this guy at number 1. But it's hard not to because if you play one sport and dedicate all your time to one sport, but then you win the state's highest honor in that one sport, Blake Biondi's number 1.
Blake Biondi has, so this goes back to what we talked about with girls basketball, and maybe we don't cover it as much as we should, because there was pressure on Grace Kirk, but she had a little less pressure than Blake Biondi. Blake Biondi was supposed to be the guy. He was supposed to be the guy when he was a sophomore and as a junior, and he came back as a senior. Every target in the state of Minnesota, on the hockey side of the state of Minnesota, every target was on Blake Biondi. You know, we joke about the fact that he scored so many goals against North Shore, but he scored against everybody, and everybody was marking him. There was never a game that he wasn't the guy they paid attention to, and yet still Mr. Minnesota, not disappointed anybody, brought him to where they needed to get. Did they win the tournament? No. Like we said, Matamidai's goalie stood on his head. Blake played a great game. I'm sure the Hermantown hockey fanatic here that's going to go next can get into more detail, but that's why I voted for him there.
Yeah, and I had him at number 1 in my ballot as well, and I think it's one of those things. Obviously, we appreciate the multi-sport athletes. I'm sure that if Blake picked up a baseball in the spring, he could probably figure it out and be pretty good at that on a different sport as well. But he's dedicated and has so much pressure. I think Dave was talking about the pressure of coming back, and he had opportunities to go play at other levels, and a lot of pressure from NHL scouts to potentially go to other levels to help your career. But he decided to stick around for his friends and in the community he grew up in, and I think that's a huge honor for him, and it's something he wore as well. And also, after the way last season ended, not making it to the state tournament, he took it upon himself to try to carry this team, and he did it, proved himself as a leader, not only on the ice but off the ice, and what he was able to do all season long, and to win the first Mr. Hockey Award in the history of Hermantown hockey, only the second Class A person to ever win Mr. Hockey Award.
Right. Who's the other one again?
Yeah, Johnny Pohl.
We always get Johnny Pohl mentions on this show.
There we go, Johnny Pohl from Red Wing. But yeah, it's to have the pressure all season long. You hear the stories of guys coming back for their senior years, and maybe it doesn't plan out that way because you're not going to surprise anybody. But he did everything that he had to do. Hermantown was right in their state championship game, and I think when you come away with those honors, there's not going to be a better high school hockey player for a long time. I mean, he's in the conversation of best local high school hockey players of all time.
Right. And when you think about being the first Mr. Hockey at Hermantown, even just that, I know Hermantown wasn't really a big deal till probably the turn of the century, but list the names. It's quite an accomplishment.
Right. Toph made a good point that I hadn't thought about until just now, and that's the pull. We said that he stayed in school, and for every other sport in our area, staying in school is just, that sentence is weird. But the pressure that high school kids are put on by junior college and professional scouts to leave high school to go play someplace else against better competition, more games away from home, grow up, don't be mama's boy, all that stuff. You will not get better in high school, so you got to go play juniors now if you want a future, right? All those pressures that he turned away and did something different than what you see from many high school hockey players. That weighs into this vote.
Right, and he wasn't just like juniors too. He had an opportunity to play for Team USA all season long, and that's a rarefied air honor right there.
And you had talked about, and that's 2 rarefied air references in the last 5 minutes from Topher. But at the same time, you talked about the Denfeld kids laying the foundation for that program to really come of age. I wonder does Blake Biondi lay the foundation for the 4-year career? Because we got to venture to guess that in the future, there are going to be other kids that are going to get that junior offer, maybe that Ann Arbor Team USA offer. Does somebody look at Blake Biondi because they were impressionable this year when they were maybe 12 and say, no, I'm going to stick around because it's my buddies, it's a state title run?
Yep, I hope that happens, Brian. I hope you're 100% right.
Right, and I think, you can look at Ryder Donovan at Duluth East previously, decided to stick around for his senior year and getting a run to the state tournament. I think when you see those guys and your idols, you mentioned the 12-year-olds watching guys like that, making that decision, I hope it does lead to more kids sticking around for their senior years. But we'll see right away, because Hermantown's got another guy in Joey Pierce, who's I'm sure getting that same pressure right now.
Well, and that was going to be my next line. You can influence the 12-year-olds. Maybe you can influence the 16-year-olds as well, because guys behind you watched what you did. Maybe they want to do that too.
Well, guys, I think the Pierce conversation has so many more levels on it. If he stays as a senior, that says probably more about Biondi than anything else, because he's not he's not an original Hermantown guy, right? He wasn't born there, and he didn't bleed it. So if he stays through his senior year with all those pressures, I mean, how much of that can you put at Biondi's feet? And that might be the most amazing leadership example of any of them.
Topher's
You're
nodding.
absolutely right.
I think that's my cue to continue. These seniors make up great teams. Team of the year, number 5, Esco football. Now, Dave, you and I had them week 1. They were in Proctor. Were they good? Sure. Were they great? No. Then they had an unspeakable tragedy and motivated themselves to be great. We could have put them a little bit higher, but maybe in a good spot at number 5.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It was a team that overcame, the greatest hill, the most difficult thing to overcome, and they overcame it. Yeah, I don't have anything to add on that.
Right. I think that with Esco football, it's just the story and everything that team did and coming together and overcoming that unspeakable tragedy. The way that they were able to rally together, I think that's a team that became a team and did what they had to do to get themselves through something that a lot of kids should not have to go through at that point in their lives, and they made their way through it.
Absolutely. They reached the state tournament. At number 4, we're going to start to question ourselves. We spent a lot of the last half an hour just applauding this team to no end, yet this team finished 4th. Now, I feel about this one the way Dave feels about the Hammer game. CEC hockey comes in at number 4. I thought they should have been a lot higher. You win 17 in a row. You go to state. You finish runner-up. You have what Dave calls a 12-year-old goalie as affectionately as possible, and you're 4th. Come on. I know I covered you. As usual, I covered you. But why are they 4th? Come on, guys.
No, you're right, Brian. Looking at it, is it quite? This might be the hardest pick of them all. This looking at this, that CEC girls hockey team is going to be remembered for a long time. And just being part of the team of the year conversation says a lot. I mean, look at who they're number 4 over. I mean, it's an interesting group right now that we have, right. And this 3-4. This is one of those one vote this way, one vote that way points. So yeah. 3 and 4 is pretty interchangeable here.
And for the record, Topher got his vote in before you did, and I texted you and I said, Dave, I thought you were going to save me on this one, but you didn't. And I love Beth Clark. And number 3 is the Hermantown girls. And they had a great season on the basketball court. But they lost to East, they lost to Proctor. The state tournament ended and they were already done. They lost twice. But, Dave, you might remember, I think it was 20 years ago now, the Gophers were a bubble team. Imagine that, for the NCAA basketball tournament. And every argument against them getting in was valid. The argument that got them in was they beat the number 1 team in the entire tournament, Louisville, that year. Well, Hermantown beat who's going to be our team of the year, and I think that put them in this 3rd spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. They beat that team when that team was rolling too. It wasn't that they caught them when everybody was sick on a Tuesday, right? I mean, Hermantown overcame a Duluth Marshall girls team that's, more than legit. So yeah, and then to make the run, right? And then to make the run. So.
Well, I think that's part of it for me too, was just breaking that dry spell for state tournament appearances for Hermantown's girls basketball team. And obviously Hermantown's not known as a basketball school by any means, and girls basketball might be one that even gets shortchanged even more so. But to see Coach Beth Clark make that team go on their run and make it to the state tournament, I think was impressive to see, and so that's why they got my vote in this area.
Sure it is, but it's absolutely not hard to argue with either way. Stop the presses at number 2. Hermantown boys hockey finished 2nd again.
Yeah, they this is the weight of expectation. We've talked about this in over the time of our show, the weight of expectation on things like team of the year. We talk about the expectation that Duluth East hockey has. It's going to be tough for them to be team of the year if another team steps up, right? Because the expectation is 16, 17 wins and a trip to the tournament. And
Well,
so,
quite frankly, if you want to go with East Hockey, they could have been the surprise of the year because nobody says if it's positive or negative.
100%. Well, so could my team. But the Hermantown hockey team is a little bit in this situation a victim of expectations. They did what they're supposed to. They're really good. They should be in the conversation of team of the year. But the other team did more. So it's not that Hermantown wasn't the team of the year. They're just a victim of expectation, I think, in this situation.
Right. But did the other team do more? Because quite frankly, if we would have known what would have happened to this team of the year, they could have moved up, they could have moved down. They were en route to the state semis. State got stopped. Team of the year, the Marshall girls.
Yeah, but Brian, this is one of those things that we're going to look back forever. There are examples, numerous examples at all layers of life where something gets stopped early. Something good gets stopped early. And this is one of those cases where this team, 20 years from now, we're going to remember this team not because they got to the semis, but because they were on this ridiculous roll. They were loaded, and we're sure that they would have gotten the rest of the way and won it. And we'll have that argument for the rest of our lives.
I think you're right. I mean, Duluth Marshall girls basketball team is a very deserving team of this top spot. Obviously, I think with the arguments we made about all 5 teams that we spoke about, it shows how lucky we were to be able to follow some of these teams. But Duluth Marshall girls basketball making that long run is certainly impressive, and maybe part of the question mark of not knowing might help.
Exactly.
I mean, they very well could have been state champions.
Are we actually benefiting from the fact that spring sports didn't happen? Because think of how much debate that we're having over 2/3 of the calendar year in sports. Now, I'm not happy in any way that spring sports didn't happen, but we're having trouble squeezing this into a solid hour plus. You put the good spring teams in there, we're still arguing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't have a guest is what we don't have because we won't have time. This girls basketball, I can't wait to talk to CJ about this. This girls basketball team, that game at Mesabi East and how impactful that game was on everything else that happened. And so many good teams that get into that situation and they panic, right? And then, they stumble. We've seen it across, how many great teams have we watched over the years that get to that point and they just never overcome. And
right.
One of the reasons this team is where it's at is it continued to overcome.
Well, that goes to coach of the year. We picked 7 guys. We could have picked 17. I mean, it's amazing the amount of coaches we get to know. It's amazing the number of coaches we start to appreciate. It was hard to stop on this one.
Yeah, it really was because just in casual conversation, we're doing nominations. It was like, oh, what about that guy? Oh, yeah, what about that guy? We got to figure out how to put that person. What about that lady? Her team was just fantastic. Oh, yeah, we got to figure out a way to do that.
Right. And we need a longer show again. We're not
right.
even limited by radio anymore. We need a longer show. 7th place is a guy that I just stick up for. Rhett McDonald went 24-5. He goes 24-2 if he doesn't face his dad. Simple as that. But he's a victim of expectations because he gets 7th because they didn't go to state, but they are the best boys basketball team in this area.
Wait till next year. You think he's got expectations this year? Next year, there are going to be some significant expectations.
They will start the year in the state's top 10. It'll be very interesting.
The idea that Rhett has been able to take what's been a good basketball team for a long time, right? The expectations of East are to be a good basketball team. But to take them to a level now where there's going to be expectations of them not just being good, but year in, year out, being the best team in northeastern Minnesota, his growing that team is a testament to his coaching skill.
Well, and then the guy who's right in front of him is Dale Jago. They're basically one of the same. I mean, if they don't fall against rivals, they don't lose the section final, they win a ton of games, they're the same thing. Difference is expectations.
So I want to harp on something Topher said just a little bit ago about Denfeld. We were talking about them in Team of the Year. Dale Jago's strongest, the thing that he's done best to this point is keep the stars of Denfeld at Denfeld. What we're seeing is the talent level that's out west, and now Dale's turning that program into a machine.
And your machine, Dave, just went haywire because you turned
Yep.
into a big uppercase D.
I'll be back in a second.
All right, fair enough. Dave's being paged. All right.
I think he's got to get some electronic power, would be my guess. But yeah, what Coach Jago did a lot. But I one thing about Rhett real quick is out of all the coaches in the area, he's done the best karaoke singing that I've ever seen in person. So I want to throw that in there as well.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, if we want to stay with radio parameters, though, we can't share the lyrics that he's best at.
I would absolutely agree there. They are not safe for radio or maybe even for YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the FCC, what kind of jurisdiction they have. I don't quite want to find out. But
well,
Dave
the FCC just let me be me. Oh, sorry. I got stuck in the FCC thing.
Absolutely. But you're back in the nick of time because you were the lone voter for Bob DeMeyer. And when I read it, I felt bad and I felt like I overlooked it. Good call.
Well, again, you got to have strength and leadership, right? And especially when your team is not going the direction you necessarily wanted to go. Then you lose your quarterback. To mix and match those pieces, get your team hot at the right time and make a deep run. Yeah, he is very deserving of being in the conversation for Coach of the Year.
No, I think you're right. He was one that, when Dave had him, it was like, oh, man, yeah, that's another team, obviously, maybe playing in Superior and have it happen in the fall might be part of it too. But you're right, Superior football, the way they turned their season around and made that run, big tip of the hat to Bob DeMeyer.
It's funny how when we saw Dave's vote for Bob, we all went, oh, oops. When you guys saw my vote for Rhett, you went, shocking.
I think that expectations, Brian, I think all of us went, oh, yeah, Rhett. Yep, Rhett. When we thought of Bob, it was, oh, we forgot about Bob.
I think I'm going to start reacting to Rhett the way you guys do. Next year, if he piles up the victories, I'm going to go, you won another game. Good for you.
I think he'd relish that expectation, just so you know.
I think he might. Finishing fourth, this is where I thought her team should have gone, but maybe you bolster a little bit higher because you're balancing coaching at a state level with being an activities director. Beth Clark.
Yeah, we've talked about it with all these. It's funny how all these high-end votes had to overcome something, right? And Beth Clark, her team made that run when people didn't expect it.
Yeah, and you mentioned her daily job of being the athletics director for Hermantown High School. Obviously, it's a school that has very busy athletics seasons as well, and teams that do go on runs, whether it's the football team making a deep run or the hockey team or the Proctor Hermantown Mirage. She's busy taking care of making sure all those facilities are staffed all the time, all the schedules are working all the time.
Don't forget,
by the way,
Topher, we were covering the Hawks at State Boys Hockey as the State Girls Basketball team was winning their section, and then by the time we were finishing State Hockey, the Hermantown Boys Basketball team was starting to make their run. I don't know how Beth Clark knows what day it is sometimes.
Well, and it's more than just the sports, right? Because she's taking care of. How many kids did we just talk about? There's 50, 60 kids right there that she's having to monitor with the help of their coach, their academic performance, their behavioral performance, all those things that athletic directors have to do that we don't even see.
You're absolutely right. What Coach Clark's able to do, and able to take on all those additional factors as well is a huge credit to her.
Hey, this is about to get awesome because popping into our video as we get to the top 3 coaches of the year, number 3 is Pat Andrews of Hermantown Hockey. We talked about him being a victim of expectations. He and Rhett McDonald, I don't know if they're friends, but they should be because Pat's a tremendous coach, but it's more headline news when he loses a game. So he finishes 3rd. Number 2, we went with Scott Arnson because we talked about how good ESCO football was. And again, the Jackson Pfister tragedy that they had to overcome. But number 1, guys, number 1 is in the house. CJ Osuchukwu, you are our number 1 coach of the year.
You are the guy.
Season. First thing we'll say is congratulations. How does that feel? I guess for one, we don't have any trophy for you.
Hey.
They've got the proper representation with the sweatshirt. But you, sir, are coach of the year. Heck of a winter for you.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. Without my girls, without the family, without our fans all buying in to my crazy madness, I definitely would have gotten this award. So I'm definitely super excited, but super thankful too.
Now, Dave, that's the first acceptance speech in the history of our awards. It was good too. He said, without my team, I wouldn't have gotten this award. He's got the acceptance speech down. Dave, go ahead.
Well, you got to be careful because you can't start naming names because you're going to forget that one person. Isn't that what they say, CJ? So
Yeah.
one of the things that we said when we picked the team as team of the year is looking back in 50 years when we're hopefully having the same conversation or when we're remembering what we like. Your team is going to be so fondly remembered because of the potential, right? It stinks that the season got done, but I think in 20 years we're going to be having a beer and saying, man, but that 2020 Marshall girls team, man, they had a chance to be the best ever.
I definitely had us winning it. I think we had a really, really good shot of winning it after, coming back, after, being the underdogs and then coming back from 10 down against New London Spicer with under 7 minutes to go. I think our team was ready to rally together and win the state championship.
So, CJ, you talked about when you were told that you got team of the year. You told me this week, you said, well, Brian, I'm going to come on and dispute that right away. You had a team of the year that we didn't even list. So we blew it. Cover us.
Yeah. I personally think the team of the year this year was Cromwell Wright. Just with everything they have accomplished, everything they did this year. They went 29-2. They lost to the number 1A school in the state. I think it was their first game of the season. And then they lost to Hermantown on a buzzer beater. But, I mean, they beat us twice. They beat MIB twice. They beat Proctor. They beat Mesabi East. I think Jeff and those girls definitely deserve team of the year.
So maybe we need to have CJ on to kind of be a preface to the awards to make sure that we didn't screw this up, guys, because he comes in pretty good. CJ, you talked about buying into your crazy madness. That was a pretty cool give and take because I feel like this community accepted you more, but you adjusted this community more. Talk about that process this year versus last.
Well, last year, I didn't really get a lot of good feedback because our first game we won by 100 points, and everybody was kind of like mad at me, and I had a target on my back. But I just had to realize like I wasn't in the DC Maryland area anymore, and we're in the Northland, so people treat basketball and take basketball in different ways, and the way people compete is totally different. So I still brought my East Coast vibe to the Northland, but I also adjusted to the Northland too.
So Brian, I have to add here, CJ, last week I had the hoodie up and pulled tight, and I got all kinds of grief about turning on the thermostat and stuff. So just know you're going to get a little bit of heat on not having enough heat in the room.
See, no, I disagree. I'm gonna interject real quick. CJ, do me a favor if you don't mind. Take your hooded sweatshirt down for 1 second.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. See, he looks like a normal human being. The reason that Dave got a bunch of grief last week is because he was wearing a hoodie and a tassel cap on like a 58-degree day. You can't do that in Duluth, Minnesota. And he was inside.
Hey, CJ, tell us about how your team came back against Mesabi East in the first playoff game and what that may have led to if that was the key to the run.
Yeah, so we all came to the game earlier to watch Proctor and Virginia. And once Proctor went down, we kind of knew like, okay, this is us. Like it was meant for us. We're ready to go to state. With Gianna only being about maybe 30-40%, just pulling her hamstring the week before. I told the other girls like, this is your time to step up. Grace Kurt was a tremendous leader during this whole run. It's crazy. So right when Gianna got hurt, Kimber Walker is like Grace's like favorite player. So I sent her the video that they have on YouTube. I don't know if you guys remember that big UConn run with Kimber Walker.
Oh yeah.
When they were like the 8th seed and nobody expected them to win or anything like that. I actually sent her that video and was like, this is what's going to have to happen. Like, you're going to have to put the team on your back, and you're going to have to carry us throughout this whole section play, throughout this whole playoffs, and then hopefully through state. And she didn't mind it. She let us. She's a great leader, tremendous leader. And I mean, with even Gianna being at 20, 30% that first game, she was better than a lot of girls on the floor. I mean, she had 10 plus rebounds and she had 5 assists. She only had like 6, 7 points, but she hit 2 big threes at the end of the game that really put us over that hump. And once we won that Masabi game, everybody in the locker room was like, okay, yeah, we're going to state.
CJ, we had another category called Surprise of the Year, and I hope you'll go back and watch this whole video as we talk about them. But one of them was Miss Friday being part of your team. You talk about Gianna not being 100%. You got to go to your bench. You went to your bench. You went to the hockey team. Talk about that transition.
Man, Lauren Friday, man, she's a hell of an athlete. Uh, she's that type of girl that could play any sport. She could play. You could put her anywhere. Just teach her the basic fundamentals, and she could play any sport. Lauren didn't score a lot for us. I think maybe the total season she had 6 points, 7 points. But I mean, her defensive tenacity out there, her diving for loose balls, her being super physical with girls, like I don't think girls expected that physicality, but she plays hockey, so she's used to being physical. Man, Marin was a great piece in our run.
I got a quick question, CJ, and thanks for joining us as well. But obviously, you had to experience an unprecedented thing this season, where you are going on that run as a potential state tournament favorite, and then suddenly the whole rug gets pulled out from underneath you. How was that first conversation with your team after you find out that the state tournament's not going on?
Man, to be honest, we all just kind of like gathered together and just kind of all broke out in tears. Like we were all like super sad and down on ourselves. But I mean, getting on the bus, maybe like an hour and a half in, we were just talking about like all the good times, all the good memories. And I mean, all the girls were just happy in a sense that we gave it our all and we didn't lose. Like the virus had to stop us from winning, and we're used to just fighting through adversity. And, this is just another stepping stone for Marshall basketball.
Yeah, Brian, that's what we were talking about. That momentum that they carried into that next game, that momentum never stops. History will always see that team as a team of destiny. And that will make them, when 10 years when we're talking about teams of destiny or teams that we wish we could have seen, this team will always be part of that because of this.
Oh, absolutely. Duluth Marshall will be the 2020 state champion in my book. Nobody can deny me that. But CJ, what does this do potentially to your summer? Whether it's AAU, whether it's workouts, whether it's recruiting, how do you approach it now? How do you tell people to virtually get things done?
Yeah, so it's funny you asked that. So me and Diami actually just did a couple of workouts with a videographer, and we're actually through Starks Academy. We're actually going to have virtual workouts. So we're going to have like a bronze session, a silver session, a gold session. I mean, obviously the gold session is for our more advanced kids. The bronze session is for kids that are just beginning basketball. So like we're learning the basic fundamentals, learning like a basic move like a jab step, footwork. We really emphasize footwork on all three levels. And then the silver session is like the middle. But that will be coming out later this week. But yeah, so that will be coming out later this week. And hopefully we can get a lot of kids to join up for this virtual touring. And they can still work out and they can still try to get better. With the AAU piece. Oh, sorry. My bad. Go.
No, I was just going to tell the kids how they can do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm still young, but this 2000 generation, man, they don't like playing outside. Like, they don't like getting muddy. They're used to being in the gym 24/7. Like, I understand I was born in the 90s, but, man, we were outside all the time. Like, our parents have to come outside to get us. And I think this would be a good time for these kids to really get back to that. Like, go outside, go get money, go run hills, You don't have to ride a bike or do squats to get your calf muscles bigger or try to get your vertical. Do it old school. Like, go run a hill. Do push-ups. You don't need the weight room. Do push-ups, do sit-ups, do pull-ups. You could do all that in your house. And I mean, ball handling, working on footwork. I mean, only thing you need is a ladder and some jump rope. And some cones. You can do that in your garage. You can do that outside. Like, these are little things that you can do to get better and work on your game. So when we do get back in the gym, everybody doesn't just look rusty.
I love that. Keep it old school and you can still get it done. CJ, my question for you now is this. Grace Kirk is a leader. She's gone. Nobody can guard against graduation. Gianna Neefkins is not gone. How
Yeah.
quick do you tell her you're next? You're our leader.
Well, she's been one of our leaders before. Her and Grace. I mean, everything ran through her and Grace. My personal opinion is I think Gianna is the best girl in the class of 2021. There's only two girls that um, people can throw out there to me and have an argument with, and that's Sophie Hart and Adalia McKenzie. They're in the cities, but I mean, she's definitely the best girl around here. I think she's going to have a fantastic year next year. And, this time has kind of been a blessing and a curse where she can't play AAU, but she's resting her hamstring. And she's probably about 85, 90% by August. I could see her being back to 100%. And yeah, I think she's going to be really, really scary next year. So is our team, though. I just feel like next year, like our team in a whole is going to be a lot better. I think people like Layla Monroe, Merle Morozic, they stepped up big in the playoffs that people don't really know about. Merle, she's getting recruited right now by a couple of D3s from the WIAC, MIAC, UMAC. No, there's more to our team. With Grace being our ball handler, our leader, and things like that. I just feel like other girls are forced to step up. So I like our chances next year.
All right, I like that. So you corrected us super quickly with the team of the year. What about coach of the year? You're our winner. Who are the coaches you respect?
Definitely one of them is Jeff Buffetta. And man, for him to get, I don't know, for him to be from a super small town in Mount Iron and to get 100 girls to buy into basketball where, there's kids in bigger schools around here and they can barely have 30 girls on their 8th through 12th grade team is amazing. And then for him to make that run to go to state 9 straight years, like that's not easy at all. And I just like his I don't care attitude. Like he beats teams by 100. He beats teams by 80. And he's not holding anything back. He's saying, you guys get better. We're getting better. So why can't you? So I definitely respect Buffetta. Another person I really, really like is Beth. Like, I haven't seen her coach for a long time, but the last 3-4 years, like, her girls play hard for her and they compete. And she's like a silent assassin. She doesn't really say too much. She sits there, she coaches, and she does her thing. But those are the two coaches around here that I really super like. I'm not saying I don't respect any other coaches, but those are the two coaches that really get my attention.
All right, so I got to go to the Jordan versus LeBron argument because the documentary is bringing it back.
Yeah.
You brought up Jordan with the Wizards in a story on Fox.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that you did it as an excuse to give a shout out to your homeland because he finished with the Wizards.
Yeah.
I'm a Jordan guy in this argument to the end. What's your take?
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, so if we're going overall, just straight basketball, LeBron is probably the best basketball player we have ever seen, just from everything he can do. But like skill-wise, not saying he's the best, but I'm taking Jordan. I mean, Jordan's undefeated. He's 6-0 in the NBA Finals, and he has done he's won MVP, Defensive Player of the Year in the same years. He's I think it's 9 all-time defensive first team. Like the guy's he just gets it done. LeBron,
The guy took 3 years off and still dominated the game. That's the end of the argument for me.
Yeah, with LeBron, the thing that blew it for him was when he lost to the Dallas Mavericks and he let an old Jason Kidd and an old Jason Terry lock him up. Like I can't respect that.
Right. He let JJ Barea become a thing.
Yeah.
JJ's Timberwolves contract is directly from LeBron James.
Yeah, no,
the thing that is interesting to me, and Topher brought it up this a little bit ago. Mike took what he had and won. LeBron had to lean into other stars and say, hey, come play with me. Let's set up a super team. But CJ, we were talking about the big O earlier. Oscar did much of the same stuff LeBron did 45 years ago. Average triple doubles.
Yeah, but I mean, no offense to the big O, but he was playing against plumbers and people that was working with those people still had second jobs. Like
awesome.
As much as I love the Big O, that's the best answer in the history of this show right there.
That's awesome.
So let me say this. If we ask you to choose between Jordan and LeBron, is that like you asking us to pick Grace or Gianna? You can't get it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, you can't get it wrong. There's no wrong choice with that.
Well, let me ask you this. Did we get our Coach of the Year choice wrong? I say no.
Oh, nah, for sure. No, I think I am the coach of the year.
Out of way.
I got no problem with that. CJ, thanks for joining us.
it.
This was fun. I will talk to you sooner than later. Let's do it again.
Thanks, CJ.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
Stay
All right,
safe.
that is our NSP Coach of the Year, CJ Osuchukwu. That was sweet.
That was awesome. That was a great interview. The
was
answer
fun
about
to have him.
LeBron and Michael was awesome.
No, it was really good. It was fun to see. And I mean, the best was getting the Big O conversation and just how professional sports have changed in general, right?
And again, there are going to be viewers that are going to have to Google the Big O. Be careful what you click on, is all I can say.
Yes, it's Oscar Robertson.
There you go. I think we've exhausted our time constraints for the day, but this was super fun. Hopefully, a lot of high school administrators, coaches, athletes will watch, particularly this hour. Guys, have a great weekend. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you're watching, congratulations on a great but really weird high school year. I mean, all the graduation stuff that's going on now is super cool, but seniors know that we as a program really respect what you've done over your 4 years and have been excited to cover it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations to everyone that was mentioned. And obviously, kudos to everyone for strong sports seasons, and keep going out and making us proud when you move on to the next level, whether it be on the athletic fields or, into your careers.
Yep.
Absolutely. Congratulations to all that were mentioned. Feel free to comment with who we forgot, because a lot of people are going to do that. And the more feedback we get, the better we'll get at this. The journalist in me can now say second annual. We've done this twice. We look forward to doing it again. We've done a lot of YouTube shows as well. We look forward to at least continuing to do this show in some way. I won't close. Dave will. He's raising his hand like we are in the classroom. Distance learning. Go ahead.
Such a nice segue, Brian. Thanks. Hey, if you're watching this though, share it. Share it over and over and over again. We're trying to build the brand a little bit, shall we say, social media wise. So if you like what you see, hit the share button, whether it's here or on Facebook or anywhere.
Well, let's give the ultimate YouTube directions.
You can
hit
do it, Brian.
like, hit subscribe, and let's see if Dave remembers how we do this to close. We are the Northland Sports Page. We are done for this week. I'm Brian Prudhomme.
Oh, my turn again. My name is Dave Cook. Thank you very much for listening. I'm not good at this. You need to do this.
I'm Topher Davis. Thanks for watching.
All right.
You're laughing.
So there, I'll do it. If Dave really needs me to do it, on behalf of the Northland Sports Page, thanks for being here this Saturday. I'm Brian Prudhomme with Dave Cook, Topher Davis. We'll see you next weekend. Go enjoy the weather. We'll bring this with you.